Okay, this is Doug Pagitt and Chris Hawk. Chris is the author of the book From Willow Creek to Sacred Hearts, Rekindling My Love Affair with Catholicism. Do I have that right?
That's close. I don't have the fair. Rekindling my love for Catholicism.
My love for Catholicism.
It's horrible.
We're recording this live before a live audience of people talking about other things at the Simple Way community in Philadelphia. So Chris, we've talked a lot, and if people haven't listened to the other segments yet, they should. This very fun conversation about the authorities in Christianity and so on. But you have had a very profound and life-altering move from Protestant Christianity and evangelical, positive evangelical Christianity. Like, you weren't beat up by fundamentalists, and you didn't come from a bad situation or any of that. And you named the church you were part of, Willow Creek.
It gave me a lot.
Gave you a lot, got you into Christianity as a teenager, but you found a real need and benefit from moving out of Protestantism into, like, I don't mean this in a negative sense at all, hardcore Catholicism. Like, in your neighborhood, full commitment, you bought the whole thing. For people who wouldn't know, couldn't imagine for themselves, what positive things are there for someone who's come out of generally healthy Protestantism?
Yeah.
What good things have you found in Catholicism? Like tell us the good story about why is this better for you?
Well, to link it to what we were discussing before, there's something about that largeness of the Catholic community. And again, I insist on it not being about uniformity, but about joining this almost intolerably large and diverse community that holds together these numerous things that you might not have ever run into. For example, to come back to like how I wrote Jesus for President a few years ago, and
it's kind of an
Anabaptist-y kind of thing. And one of the things that I remember many years ago when we talked about Yoder, you kind of had some raised eyebrows about, but isn't there some significant limitations to just that aggressive pure pacifism? And here's one of the things that having an authorized canon of saints does, is it says, we have St. Francis in our canon, but we also have Joan of Arc in there.
Yeah.
And so there's almost an intolerable diversity in that canon.
Okay.
So one of my points here is that by being a part of a Catholic community, both local and global, is I'm always introduced to things that I at first might have had my full opinion of. But then I jump into and start to keep percolating on the depths of it. So liturgy is another beautiful thing for me. And at our conference this week, I probably won't cry now because I've had, enough coffee and wine and people, talking loudly that I won't start weeping bitterly here.
But you do get emotional when you describe the liturgy.
Yeah, because for me, the liturgy is an acquired taste. Anybody who's led worship like me with smoky machines, laser beams, and like jumbotrons, anybody who's done that, liturgy is boring to them. It is boring. And, some of the Girardians say it's supposed to be boring because it's trying to help you get out of mob mentalities of needing to whip up a hype of frenzy, which is a sacrificial mindset, which usually what we do in those mindsets is murder people in mobs. And so the liturgy is a sort of gathering together a mob and disarming them by having them look at a victim. That's why I don't like this. I want a bloody, dying, tortured victim on the wall.
So that's great. So for Protestants who say, why do you leave Jesus on the cross when we're resurrection people, you found in Catholicism that to gather together and to look at a crucified body is to say, look what we're capable of.
Yeah. We are so prone to violence. If God showed up here, we might torture
crucify him.
And that's what the crucifix does.
All right.
Now,
you've converted me to being one who. I got to tell you, I've never been a fan of the crucifix.
But you got to have
very moment.
Until we stop torturing somebody to death, until we stop murdering people, we're not safe to pull down the serpent off of the thing. I mean, that's what the Moses image is. We can't recover from murdering each other unless you look at us murdering that guy.
So how is it that in your deep pacifism life, when you were an Anabaptist, tantalized, Christian, why don't they incorporate that view into Anabaptist pacifism?
Because they're too diverse.
That's just great. Okay.
They're too diverse, Doug. They're not too uniform. They're too diverse. They would see pacifism as like, yeah, but in people like Joan of Arc's situation, etc., you can't be so myopic. You have to include a very broad canon of interpretation. So, anyway, so the cross to me, I walked into the Mass without the acquired taste of liturgy. But I had to acquire that taste. And that to me is one of the reasons we submit to certain forms is it takes time to look at something and see what's going on there. Like we think what we know is going on in Mass. Oh, this is just boring.
Why don't people just explain it like you did to me, where I don't have to, hang around for 6 years before it sort of dawns on somebody that that's why there's a crucifix. I've been in this for 25 years. I've never heard a single person, I think at any point along the way I would have been converted by that idea.
But see, if you actually
what the hell are you holding out for, you people?
If you actually listen to the Eucharistic prayers, they talk about victimization.
Yeah, but they don't say, hey, the reason we should keep them up on the cross is to remind ourselves that people like us, we'd probably kill someone who's like that. So until we're done with that, let's keep the reminder.
He has to stay up here as long as
Let's keep the sticky note on the refrigerator that we're the kind of people who do these things.
Well, to me, the core of the reminder is what they give you in the body, the tortured body of Christ, because they give you this piece of bread, and in Latin they call it the hostia, which means the victim.
Didn't they go out of business?
Hostia? Oh, very funny.
Hostess.
Hostia in Latin means victim. And so when they hand you the victim...
Okay, gotta tell you.
Yeah.
Why aren't they telling people this?
It's in the words. They say
it's hidden like a friggin' math problem.
But you have to... It's an acquired taste, and nobody...
It's not if somebody tells it to you. But they're hiding it like a secret. Okay, why are they holding out like it's some kind of a secret? And then telling me it's an acquired taste because I didn't deconstruct it and figure it out when the guy's got his back to me and he's reading the thing and calls it the host and doesn't tell me that by the way, in the other language that we prefer, and so the acquired taste is you've got to decode this like it's some sort of a riddle. What is it about that?
There's something about my experience of liturgy which is pre-language.
You like the riddle.
Well, because any artist says, if somebody asks them, well, what does that painting mean, or what does the song mean? What we know they always say is, if you want me to didactically explain it, you're not going to experience it.
Okay, but I'm all for that. But the difference is the artist then isn't going to come up to you later and go, what do you think it means? And I tell them, like, no, that's not actually what it means. The difference between a riddle and a person's engagement with artwork is both of our interpretations, me as the viewer and you as the artist, are both valid. In this case, I don't get to tell the Catholic Church what host means. They're going to say,
fixed.
No, it's fixed. So you don't get to pull the artist line, do you?
Yeah, but my point is, there's something about
really good.
It keeps going.
You know why? It's because it's the devil. Okay, so continue to evangelize me on the good things that have come out of this. We've already discussed the fact that you can end up with a critique of sacrifice by saying, look, human beings are so capable of, and then you can do whatever you need to do with Jesus. Give him God status and say we would even kill God, or give him righteous human status and say even to one who wanted to bring about righteousness, we would kill the righteous one. Either way you go, that's a nice piece. And the idea of the host, that when you take communion in your tradition, you're saying to one another, you are that the host is the sacrificed one.
Or is the victim.
The victim.
The host
victim.
means victim in Latin.
So I love that. But as we were talking, in between the segments here, not every Catholic interpretation includes those. Currently around the world, there's variants, descriptions of why there's a crucifix as opposed to an empty cross, and why there's what the host is.
There is some diversity on that. You're complaining about their diversity?
No, I'm saying this then might be that your experience of Catholicism is not other people's experience of Catholicism, so you're not really in the same faith they are. But what else? Tell me more about what's been beneficial for you.
Some of it even these are slightly closer to the surface, but I think they're still really deep, is what we do liturgically. And this isn't only Catholic, but liturgical traditions that sort of sacralize our seasons of life together by marking them together as communities. There's something that is just profoundly human about that. Almost you might even say a pagan about it, that we need to celebrate the turning of the seasons together.
Well, we already have those, so why do we need the church's overlay? Why do we need at the winter solstice? Why do we also need Advent? Why do we need at the spring equinox also Easter? Like, why do we have to baptize those human rhythms with the religion's brand language of what this season really is?
Right. Well, this is where the Gerardians are actually really huge, because they look at certain pagan mythologies that had a certain hue or dim kind of glow of God's divinity in them, but some of those myths were actually violent lies underneath. That's why we call the word myth a lie. So, the sort of Easter dying and rising thing has a certain beauty to it because it reflects nature, that we die and rise. But some of these stories, at least if you look at the Gerardian take on these, like the Dionysus story of dying and rising, Pan, Persephone, Osiris, were sort of, those aren't just nice little narratives of springtime. The Gerardians think that these are stories about actual founding murders of our societies depend on sacrificial human violence. And so in a way, Christianity sort of disarms some of the real harsh venom that comes in paganism, in the practice of human sacrifice or things like that.
Yeah, okay, so I like the Gerardian view on a lot of things, and Gerard is a particular philosopher. If people don't know even what Gerardian is, he's a philosopher who's influenced Catholicism, and there's Catholics who hold both to Gerard's view of violence and sacrificial systems, and they're Catholics, and they've mashed the two up, done a nice blend, done a little hip-hop mashup of these two ideas together.